If you live in a place where there is not a Yemeni coffee shop, well, don't worry because there's probably one on the way. Haraz Coffee started in 2021 with a single shop in Dearborn, Michigan. As of July of 2026, the company has almost 50 locations, and another 50 are on the way by the end of this year. And Haraz is just one of many brands who fit in or around the Yemeni coffee aesthetic. Just in the last year where I live in North Austin, we have had 3 Yemeni shops open up. This style of cafe is really taking off. In this episode, I spoke to Hamzah Nasser, founder and CEO of Haraz Coffee, about what it's been like to run a brand that is in high-speed takeoff mode and also has a distinct way of sourcing coffee and serving guests. We discussed franchising operations, adapting the menu for different markets so the brand could reach different types of customers, and what the global takeover plan looks like because, by the looks of it, Haraz Coffee is not going to stop at their planned 300 locations, I can tell you that. I'm Garrett Oden from Fresh Cup, and welcome to the Coffee Think Tank. The most innovative coffee businesses I know give themselves the space and energy to nurture a culture of innovation. Unfortunately, space and energy are things that most coffee business owners are short on. That's why I'm excited to introduce you to this season's sponsor, SumUp. SumUp is a point-of-sale company with a powerful suite of tools designed to help coffee businesses master the day-to-day and optimize customer retention so that you can have the flexibility and confidence to explore new opportunities. A full digital POS system, mobile card readers, loyalty and marketing automation, and even self-serve kiosks. Whether you're running a small cafe or a growing roastery, SumUp's tools give you the breathing room to explore innovation in your business. Visit sumup.com to learn more. Hamzah Nasser, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Garrett. And this is my second podcast since I've opened Haraz, and I'm excited to do it.
Oh, man. Well, you should be on more podcasts because this is an interesting story you have here. Haraz Coffee has been associated with the Yemeni coffee shop movement, and you have some interesting things to say about whether you still identify with that movement. But, when I have been to Yemeni coffee shops, and I've been to a few, there is a very distinct experience around them. There's a particular aesthetic. The drinks are sometimes a little different, the pastries, and it does not remind me in a lot of ways of when I've gone to sort of the Central Perk, sort of classic American cafe that has there's somebody pulling really dark espresso shots, there's croissants, maybe a French press is in the corner that gets pulled out, once a week kind of thing. Or even like specialty coffee shops where there's like single origins on the espresso menu, and there's like these maybe wild signature drinks. And, the Yemeni sort of aesthetic has a distinct flavor to it. And I'm really curious, maybe there's people who haven't encountered that yet. How would you describe the Yemeni coffee shop aesthetic and the experience? And, what does that look like in the Haraz Coffee locations?
Well, when I first opened Haraz in Dearborn, I never thought it would be 59 locations today. That's one thing. And I opened in a high demographic of Middle Eastern population in Dearborn. And it was only Haraz and another coffee shop at that time. And we had, all I wanted to do was serve Yemeni coffee and introduce people to the Yemeni coffee bean, the original Arabica bean. And, from there, a couple years later, we grew to 8 locations, and going into new cities and communities like Charlotte, North Carolina, and Nashville, Tennessee. I realized that our menu is not Yemeni, and most of the drinks were lattes and matchas, and Yemeni drinks were only 4 items on the menu. But our coffee beans is all sourced from Yemen, and, they're organic, 100% pesticide free, sun dried. And, regarding the Yemeni coffee buzz that's going on, you can say, there's so many people opening, coffee shops and calling them Yemeni coffee, but, we're a lot different. And, and a lot that are opening don't have the experience that we do, from the start of this journey.
There are some interesting drinks that appear on a lot of Yemeni coffee menus, and I, would probably butcher saying them out loud, but I'll give one a shot. I like Jubani. Did I say it properly?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's
there's
actually
a few other ones too.
it's actually one of my favorite drinks to kind of drink, later on in the day, you can say in the evening also. It is a decaf drink that is made of light roast coffee. And that drink only has 30% coffee. And then it has the rest of it is all the coffee husks, which is the peels, cinnamon and ginger. So it's considered a decaf in Yemen.
Love it. It's very good. There's also a few other things that are sort of common among, Yemeni styled cafes, including late hours. You'll tend to be open later with Haraz. I think, some of your cafes are open till like 11 p.m., which has become less common since COVID. I remember being some places that were open that late before COVID, but not tons. And now it seems like it's extraordinarily rare.
Yeah, some of our locations open as late as 3 a.m. And
Oh
like
my goodness.
Ramadan, people would walk by at 1:30 in the morning. They're like, what the heck is this place doing full of people at 1:30 in the morning and they're not drunk? so, so yeah, we're open pretty late.
Gotcha. So you sort of have one foot in the door because you have this history and the tradition of Yemeni coffee, but you're going to places where you're serving all kinds of customers who are looking for maybe a more broad specialty coffee experience. What is that has that been a slow transformation? Was there a moment that you were like, we got to make a hard pivot to adapt to these other locations? What's that transformation been like?
Well, coffee's always been in the culture, growing up, around the elders and the Yemeni families and homes, coffee is like the most essential thing. It's like, whether you're at a wedding, whether you're at an engagement or, there's a business uh, deal that's about to happen or a family problem that people are trying to mediate between, coffee is always the number one thing that's, served. And in the culture, it comes with an experience. So, the coffee shops that, like myself that I'm bringing is more than just, hey, come grab a coffee and go about your day. No, we want you to come in, feel welcome, you know, love the vibe. First of all, when you sit, you have access to electrical outlets. Your drink is going to be served right to your table and your food is going to be served to your table. And then, you can just get up and walk away. We clean after. It's like a full service thing. And, and when people come, they enjoy it. They don't have to sit down and drink out of a paper cup or a plastic cup. You actually give them, glass or ceramic, and people love the experience and the authenticity of having a cup of coffee, and it keeps them there for hours sometimes. And it's great seeing that people are enjoying uh, your coffee shops.
What are you doing that makes it viable to open a coffee shop late in the night when, most other coffee shops are like, I'm going to call it quits at 4 p.m., because it's not worth it after that point. What's the difference?
Well, there's a lot of people that they don't want to just, we have this thing like where they say halal food. You know what that is, right? So we call these the halal bars now. You know what I mean? You don't have to
Hmm.
go out to the bar and have a drink, and you can just go have some coffee. And sometimes there's people that, you know, every weekend, that's all they do is they want to go out, they meet at the bar, and not everybody wants to do that. It's a clean space. You don't have to go drink. You can just come, bring your friend, your girlfriend, your wife, your best friend, or, and just sit, and you can sit for hours and enjoy, some amazing coffee, whether it's lattes, cold, ice, hot, you know, uh, and that's what that's the difference, that it's been doing in every community that we're in. Late nights.
Gotcha. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. Um, yeah, the places that are close to where I live are, when I drive by late at night, I think they're busier than they are earlier in the day. I find myself working from somewhere at like 2 to 4 p.m., but I drive by at 8 p.m. and it's still hopping, and I think it's actually busier. So I'm always impressed by that dynamic. So let's see. You started in 2021, I believe, is when you opened the first
Yep.
Haraz Coffee location in Dearborn, Michigan. You have dozens of stores now, and you are going on to maybe 300 plus in the next couple of years, is what it seems like. That's a pretty wild, growth trajectory over just the last few years. Um, was that part of the plan from the beginning, or did this sort of just happen? What would that look like?
Well, honestly, I was working my last 7 years before coffee in the trucking industry. So I had a few trucks that, we did for the big three in Detroit in the automotive industry. So I just got, I wanted something to be close home in the community, serve the community and a community space. So, that was the idea. Thought it was going to be like a 9 to 5 thing for me every day. But, it was amazing that, people came in and then people who visit Dearborn, we get a lot of tourists that visit Dearborn, whether they're coming to see the Henry Ford Village or the Henry Ford Estate. And, they'll try out the restaurants and cafes and they'll come in, oh my God, I'm from, Austin, I'm from San Francisco, I'm from all over the US and bring this coffee shop here, bring this coffee shop. In the beginning, I was like, I don't know about that. But, 6 months later, I really started thinking hard about it. Like, you know what? I think, I think I should do that. Everybody's, interested that walks in and visits. So yeah, I began working on the expansion of first developing a warehouse where I know I could, distribute to anywhere we expanded. So, today we're happy to see the Haraz going from one location in 2021, in April 2021, to 59 locations, July 2026. And yeah, we do have a trajectory of 100 locations by end of this year. Some of the locations were supposed to open earlier this year, a little bit of delays on some construction. And, due to the war that took place, a lot of things were delayed. So we're still aiming for that. And we kind of built our team a little bit bigger, our training team who opens stores. So we should get close to that at least.
Wow. So what's the Haraz HQ team look like? How many people are on staff who are enabling the franchisees to execute well?
Here at Haraz HQ, we have a few departments. We have our franchise development team, uh, and we have our operations, we have our training, we have our IT and marketing, and our project management, and everybody's then we have our distribution guys. So we have about 35 employees here at Haraz headquarters, and every single area is responsible on delivering, whether it's project management or the marketing or the distribution side. And it's tough. Everybody comes in, everybody works hard, and we focus and learn to be better every single day.
Did you have to bring somebody on who had experience in franchising and, scaling up a food service company like this, or are you doing this on your own?
No, I mean, I've been doing this, with guys that I hired here in house. I've always gotten calls from franchise brokers, that, hey, let us find you investors for, 50% of your franchise fees and whatnot. Well, I just never used to get back to those guys. And our leads always flooded our emails every single day. There's not a day that passes without us getting multiple applications for franchising. But we filter all of them. We see who are qualified, and we reach out to many. We have interviews, and we teach them a lot about Haraz to let them know, like, this is what it takes to be an owner operator. So that's and then we go based on those who have a good business background, and who will implement the brand at its best.
So you're getting multiple inquiries a day. You've got, hundreds of stores coming in the future. and you haven't gone through like franchise brokers or, another channel to get people to come to you? Or is this all happening organically, or how are people, encountering this as an opportunity?
Most of it is organic, with the strong reputation we've built and, nationwide. And it's, there's always people, especially right now during the summer, there's people contacting us from other states. Hey, I was down in Miami and I went to your Pembroke Pines Haraz Coffee House and I loved it. It was so, packed and, it was full and the service was great. And I'd love to open one here in Des Moines, Iowa. So, that's the most recent application I seen this morning. I'm like, that's amazing. So people travel, from different states and they go, they get invited to our coffee shops and then they think about like, oh, you know what, I want to bring this where I from, so.
Are these people who are, they have existing restaurant groups where they've done this before, but with other brands, or are these new people coming? What's that look like?
Some, we get some that have, that are, franchisees of different brands. We get some that are, just investors, and we get some that are doctors and, and different, job skills. But, we qualify everyone the same. And the most important thing is making sure, the people we trust with our brand are those who are going to implement it the best way.
I did contract work once with a fairly large franchise company, and it was always fascinating to hear that they had a lot of people who were doctors, dentists, lawyers, other kind of like well-paying careers who were looking for places to deploy their savings, and I thought that was always really interesting. Okay, let's see. The competitive landscape for Yemeni coffee shops and Yemeni adjacent coffee shops is getting hotter. There's other brands. Let's see. Haraz, I think, was the first one here in Austin that I recall.
Yeah.
There's an Arwa Coffee open down the street from where I live. About another mile down the street, we now have a Kahawa House. And then I read that there is another brand coming up in far Northlander. And none of these places I don't think existed before 2025 or maybe 2024. So it seems like, a lot's happening in a very short amount of time. How are you thinking about competition and differentiating yourself and, and growing in the face of, some other rivals who are also seeming to take a similar path?
Well, see, that's why we're like, we consider ourselves as, Haraz specialty. We're a specialty coffee house, and, we serve premium organic coffee. And, we know that there's many Yemeni coffee shops popping up everywhere, but we don't want to be in the same category where, you walk into one of them and it gives you a bad taste to your mouth. And then you automatically assume that, you know what, you get invited to another Yemeni. Oh, I already tried Yemeni coffee. I don't like it. So we don't want to be in that category. That's why we're very different than any other brand that's come out. And specifically, there's a lot of things that make us different and our own, not even just our own recipes. Drinks that we come out with, and then they get imitated somewhere else, but they're not like ours. There's milk that we have our own recipe of milks that we import specifically made by us for us. Even the pistachio sauce, there's some cross pistachio sauce that we use in many different drinks. So there's a lot of things that we use and, that nobody else has or even can say we're the same.
Okay, you got to tell me more about this. What do you mean you're importing custom milk?
Yeah. So evaporated milk is used in some of our drinks, our traditional drinks mainly. And, we import that from the GCC, the Gulf countries in the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, Dubai. And, there's doctors for that stuff that develop, your a dairy milk for you, any way that, any recipe that you want. So we did a study, took like 6 months for us to develop our own recipe on evaporated milk until we got something that we liked and that fit our drink. And, same thing with pistachio. And then same thing with spices. You could walk in somewhere and have a mufawwar with cardamom, coffee with cardamom. But not all cardamom is the same. There's different grades. We always use grade A. And the same thing with other spices. And, and then the same way with syrups, it makes a big difference when you drink a latte and in that latte, a certain spice is added or a certain syrup from a certain company is added. It changes the taste completely.
I want to talk to you a little bit more about franchising. What is the support to you? There's a franchise fee. They have to sort of invest a certain amount to build out a store. What do you do to support them? What do those next steps look like?
So our franchise development, when you walk in, you meet with Ziad. Ziad is the owner of Optigra Advisors. And Optigra Advisors works for Haraz, and they filter all of our franchise inquiries. They go through people, you send them your financials. They want to make sure you have, you can afford. We don't want to take $50,000 franchise fee and then you can afford to build out the store. So we want to make sure you qualify and you can afford to build out a store before you pay a franchise fee. So we make sure of that. And then after you sign, the same franchise development, which is Optigra Advisors, will help you do a market research and a market analysis in the area that you want to open. So we pull, let's just say you want to go and open in East Austin, and we do a market study there, but we find that west side of Austin is a lot busier. There's a lot more traffic. There's a lot more spending power over there. So we would tell you hey, we think you should be here. So we increase your success rate, to succeed in your franchise journey. So after, you're done signing the franchise and you found a location, then you're handed over to our project management team, which then begins to introduce you to the architect who draws up your plans. And then we assign an interior designer who designs the whole interior job for your location. And after that, after your store is built out, you're then handed over to the training and distribution, where all three and marketing have a meeting where we work on doing a press release for your location, getting you your startup order, and sending the team that will train you and your staff at your location. After that, then you just open.
What do you dictate in terms of the aesthetic of the store and the build out, tables and chairs, the espresso machine? Are you providing all of that, or do they have some sort of say about what that looks like?
All the equipment we provide, including the tables, the interior design. Yeah, we always have we want to make sure that you walk into any store, any of our 59 stores you walk in, you automatically feel like you're in a Haraz. And, in some places we might add a little touch to complement the neighborhood it's in or the community that it's in. But, for example, our East Lansing, Michigan location, we added a little bit of green to complement the Spartans since it's in the campus of Michigan State University. So, in certain areas, we do add a little bit of touches, but we don't completely change the design where you walk in, wait, is this a Haraz or not? You automatically know you're in a Haraz when you enter the door.
Gotcha. Okay, let's talk about the coffee. So you source coffee from Yemen. I read in a New York Times article, I think last year, that you were having issues getting coffee out of the country because of the fighting that was going on. What's that been like? And is that still a disruption for you?
Yeah, it is still a disruption. We have an amazing coffee farmers, a family that we deal with. They actually have a lot of farms, and also they buy everyone else's crops and they also sell it for them, So they're the biggest, they're the biggest exporters of coffee in Yemen. And in the United States, we're the biggest importers of Yemeni coffee. So, we've built a great relationship with them. They're very honest. They're honest to the point where they care about the consumer who drinks their coffee. They want to make sure they deliver a healthy cup of coffee. We pay them a good fair share, for the price of coffee, but also the war is affected, it affects them. It affects the supply chain of, the shipping disruption. It affects us. And like you've seen, here in the US, how many families have complained about inflation, and high rise prices, like the fuel, anywhere there's I look at the whole world as the same body. And when there's one part of the body that, is not, it's not healthy, it's going to affect everyone else. So, it's, this Red Sea disruption that we've had, and in Yemen, things always seem to get, different parts of Yemen are fighting with each other. So it disrupts us a lot.
When we've talked to other roasters, they'll say things like, when there was a 50% tariff on Brazil, we just went to Mexico, or, in Colombia, there was this weird thing for a little while. And so we just put those contracts on pause and we bought from somewhere else. But it sounds like you can't really do that. If you're sourcing from Yemen is, sort of a critical part of your menu, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the disruption, and what levers do you pull, if you're not going to be going to just another country and grabbing something else?
So right now we have about 70,000 pounds of, coffee reserve. So this week we're expecting another shipment from Yemen, another 33,000 pounds arriving. So that should increase ours to 100,000 pounds. But that reserve, if we were to not have a shipment from now, 4 months, this could last us just 5 months, to get by. So that's what we've been doing. We've been just getting as much as we can, and, in making sure we have enough coffee to last us until, in case we have a delay of 2 loads, if 2 shipments, 3 shipments are late, we're okay until they arrive.
Gotcha.
So
Wow.
we do
Okay.
a planning ahead kind of thing.
You're in dozens of cities around the U.S., coming to dozens more. I think that I read potentially you're moving up to Canada, or do you already have cafes?
So we did sign 14 locations in Canada. The first location is due to open in Quebec, which was, something I never knew about Canada. And, starting in Quebec is probably the worst idea for anyone going from the US, because, we had to go in there and, we already got our FDD in Canada. And then we had to start all over in Quebec because everything had to be in French. And now even our coffee bags, our packaging, and everything else that's coming in now has to be in French, because that's just, that's the first language over there.
How do you say Jubani in French? Is it still just Jubani, or are you adapting it?
I don't even know. I mean, it's gonna be a challenge, but this time we're probably gonna learn from the franchisee as much as he's gonna want to learn from us.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So you're taking over the US, you're going into Canada, 14, that's a lot. Where else? In the next 5 years, are you going global?
Yeah, and that's how we make our entrance into different countries. We don't want to enter any country with just one location. You go in with one location and you don't do good, then you give everybody the impression that, oh, you know what, that works in America but doesn't work here. So we want to go in 14, and it's and I'm pretty sure they're all gonna do well. Our next target now is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is going to be hosting the FIFA World Cup, which is something hot these days. It's a hot topic. They're going to be hosting the FIFA World Cup in 2034. So they have so much development, and they've changed so much laws. Before I went to Saudi Arabia, I didn't want to go to Saudi Arabia. And, because I'm like, yeah, the laws are just too strict. You can't really do nothing. But, the new prince he's not new, but he's been there for about 12 or 13 years or so. He's made a lot of changes and he has a great vision to, make Saudi Arabia, welcome to tourism, to investors, and, anyone who's interested to, whether you want to visit or go open a business. It's, or even buy property, which was something not allowed over there. And
Hmm.
it's a lot of changes happening. I'm happy it is the powerhouse of the Middle East.
Absolutely. Wow. Okay. And also an increasingly competitive coffee scene too. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
And one thing,
Okay.
Saudi Arabia, I was there for a few months earlier this year. And if you want to talk about people who know coffee, those guys know coffee. And, most of their people that drink coffee there is all black coffee, not, lattes and stuff like that. Most of the 99% of people drink black coffee. And then there's a small percentage that, like the other flavorful stuff.
I can't say I've ever been, but I've seen pictures of cafes that it's like I don't know what they're selling to justify the beauty of this space, but it is impressive and yeah, something to see. So someday maybe I'll make a trip. Well, coming back to the US, what else are y'all working on these days? You've got a lot of locations incoming. Are y'all doing matcha or anything else that's trendy or fun or
So
interesting going on?
later this month, you should see our Haraz Matcha release. And we just signed a contract with a matcha farm that is in Japan. And we're going to be selling ceremonial matcha, the best grade they have. And it'll also be a Haraz branded matcha,
Mm.
which is one thing we focus on is consistency throughout the whole brand. We want to make sure if you walk in any store, whether it's in Detroit or it's in Texas, you're going to get the same experience and same taste.
Okay, so matcha's coming up. And I don't think that the other
And
Yemeni shops or Yemeni adjacent shops I've been to have served matcha. So yeah, that's interesting. What else? Anything else you're
well,
working on or excited about?
we did release a matcha cloud lattes about 2 months ago. We had 11 new drinks that came out, something that no one else is selling and nobody else has. And it's doing great. And I think, we've gotten some, uh, it was just at Haraz on Friday where I ran into somebody from out of state that was from Kentucky saying, this is the best matcha I've ever had in my life. I'm like, thank you.
What you call it? Matcha cloud?
Yes, yes. So it's a foam, we foam up the matcha and it'll kind of give you that creamy taste, and texture. It's something unique that I don't think nobody has the ones we carry in different flavors, 11 different flavors.
I have not been the biggest fan of matcha, but I've had a handful of drinks that I enjoyed. This one sounds interesting. Most recent one I had was it was matcha with mint and uh
Hmm.
yeah, it was really refreshing and light. Really enjoyed it. So, you have these drinks that are kind of more broadly applicable to different markets. You have, some of the Yemeni drinks on the menu. Is there a crossover in those customers? Do the people who come and want the Yemeni drinks, do they want to try matcha? Or is that, does that feel like a different customer segment? I'm curious what that looks like for y'all.
There's, when I first tried the matcha, I was like, what the heck is this? Tastes like grass. And honestly, my second try, I was like, it's not bad. And then the third, but now I kind of drink a daily. I drink like 5 cups of different types of coffees each day. One of them is matcha. So, so yeah, I mean, some walk in, they already know what they want, but we like to we tell them, hey, we have a new drink. And as they try it, or, uh, it's, they love it. And most of them 90% of them are women that drink the matcha, which is amazing. The hype is growing amongst the females. that, based on our, market study that we saw. So, yeah, I mean, it's getting up there. It's almost like 30% of our menu now.
Wow. It is wild to hear people
Yeah.
say, our sales have doubled in 3 years, but we're not buying more wholesale coffee than we were. It's, it's like matcha or refreshers, something else that's taken up so much of the menu share. So yeah, that's interesting. Not surprised to hear that it's,
Yeah. And
y'all are
I mean,
heading in that direction.
with matcha and tea, that's helped out so much. If everybody just drank coffee that walked into our door, coffee would be double the price that it is today. And, so hard to get. Last year, Brazil had a bad harvest on their coffee, and they're the biggest exporter of coffee in the world. And, and like you mentioned earlier, that they can't get it out of Brazil, they'll go somewhere else. And it kind of increased our coffee in Yemen by $3, per kilo, because the demand started shifting from other places that they couldn't get and they normally used to get, and it went to Yemen.
So you do see non-coffee drinks as a growing portion of the menu, or like growing portion of sales?
Yeah, I see, the matcha and tea are about, 35% of our sales.
Gotcha. What about food? How are you approaching food?
Yeah, food is about 15% of our sales in all cafes. Our drink menu is all the same. Sometimes you can walk and drink, ask for whatever you want. They'll make it for you. But, our pastries, they do vary based on different areas. Some places next to a lot of offices and, people want to come in, they might want a bagel or an egg sandwich. We have that, or a toast. And in some places, we just have, pastries like the viral fruit cake that looks like a banana or strawberry or mango. And, it just depends on the area that you're at. Some places like college campuses, they're more into sandwiches than other things like, cakes and stuff, sweet stuff.
All right, Hamza, anything that, you want to put out in the world because you're thinking about it or you're interested in it?
Honestly, if there was an advice that I want to give, to anyone, it would be, never look at competition and make yourself your own competition. Be better than, yourself as you grow. So, like I tell people, my competition is myself. And, every year we're growing, we're getting better. We don't focus on anyone else. We focus on our product, our menus. And, we've gained a lot of attention, with just focusing on ourselves and, developing. So that's the most important part, and don't be scared, don't be scared to make the move. The first move that you make, which is, or the first investment, that is the scariest one. That's going to make your, heart or your guts, oh man, am I doing this right? Am I making the right move? The minute you do it and it succeeds, it becomes fun. You want to just continue doing that, and you get more aggressive, to do that. And then, seeing myself, I never would have imagined, being here 10 years ago. Here I am today. And, I love what I'm doing. I love to see, Haraz in new communities, teaching people about the culture, the experience, you know, even teaching people about specialty coffee, because not a lot of people know specialty coffee. Just just a coffee. I want a coffee. They don't know that there's specialty coffee and that there's regular coffee shops. And then there's commercial coffee shops. So just teaching people, going into new communities, and making people smile, building jobs, and building an empire. It's fun.
I love it. All right, Hamza, I have asked the questions that I was most curious about. Really appreciate you being forthcoming here. Where should people follow you?
They can follow us on our Instagram at Haraz Coffee House, and on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Haraz Coffee. Yeah,
Excellent.
that's where they can find us, and we come try Haraz and you'll love it. It'll change your perspective on coffee.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks.